Next speaker is Luke Foley. Luke is the Leader of the Opposition in the Legislative Council in New South Wales, Shadow Minister for the Environment and Climate Change, Shadow Minister for Water and Shadow Minister for Energy, and tonight he speaks on behalf of New South Wales Labor Opposition. Luke.
Well, thank you, Rita, and thank you to the Beyond Nuclear Initiative for inviting me to speak tonight. At the outset, I acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay respect to their elders. I'm pleased to be here to add the New South Wales Labor Opposition, our signature, if you like, or our membership to the New South Wales Uranium-Free Charter. For 26 years, our state of New South Wales prohibited uranium exploration and mining. That ban was introduced in 1986 by the then Labor Minister for Energy and Technology, the Honourable Peter Cox. The late Peter Cox was the man who first attracted me to the Labor Party, the closest friend of my uncle. He was a minister in the Rand Labor government for 10 years, one of the finest men I've ever met. And I want to quote what he said when he introduced the Uranium Mining and Nuclear Facilities Prohibitions Bill 1986 to the Parliament. He said, "The clear objective of this bill is the protection of the health, safety and welfare of the people of New South Wales and the environment in which we live." I believe those objectives, stated by Peter Cox in 1986, have stood the test of time and remain the clear defining statement of why the ban, which until earlier this year had been supported across party lines, should have remained. But it didn't. The mining legislation amendment brackets uranium exploration close brackets Bill 2012 brought to an end that cross-party commitment to banning uranium exploration and mining in this state. And I want to tell you what that piece of legislation brought to us by this government involves. The bill amended 4 separate pieces of law. It amended the Uranium Mining and Nuclear Facilities Prohibitions Act 1986, to which I just referred. But it also amended the Mining Act 1992, the Radiation Control Act 1990, and the Aboriginal Land Rights Act 1983. It also has altered the State Environment Planning Policy, mining, petroleum production and extractive industries. So the bill is no small step. It alters 4 acts of Parliament, including the Aboriginal Land Rights Act, and the key environmental planning policy of the state that relates to extractive industries. Now, I want to salute the work that the ACF, the Australian Conservation Foundation, has done in fighting the uranium industry in this country for decades now. And what the ACF tells us is that Australia has 40% of the world's uranium deposits and supplies 20% of the world's uranium market. The ACF says on a good day that uranium becomes radioactive waste. On a bad day, it becomes nuclear fallout. Because hazardous waste, as Peter told us so powerfully, is created at every stage of the nuclear cycle, including the mining, enrichment, reactor electricity generation and reprocessing stages. Uranium waste is toxic for around 10,000 years, I'm told, and it causes distressing illnesses, as Peter told us, most commonly cancer and genetic defects. And of course, no community should be expected to live with nuclear waste. And I believe that if we in New South Wales are going to go down the road of uranium mining, then we must take responsibility for the waste. But no community in New South Wales should have to live with nuclear waste. Find me a community in this state that will say they want nuclear waste. I want to talk about the mining of uranium because the O'Farrell government's legislation this year contemplated only exploration at this stage. And what Premier O'Farrell said is, we're only exploring and going to find out where the deposits are. But of course, some government members in the parliamentary debate who spoke in support of that bill clearly anticipated exploration leading to mining. Some of them were salivating at the prospect, welcoming it. And I credit them for that because at least they're being honest about what is likely to happen unless we can build a movement strong enough to stop it. Exploration will lead to mining. I see that as inevitable. So our challenge is to ensure that in a couple of years' time, when the O'Farrell government comes back and sections of the Liberal and National parties come back saying, well, exploration's terrific, there's all this untapped wealth. As our choir kept singing about dollars, 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 they'll tell us there's all these dollars under the ground, we've found where it is, this will be terrific for our state to mine it. Our challenge is that when we come back here in a couple of years' time, that the movement against uranium mining has grown. That's our challenge for the next couple of years while they're out exploring. In 2003, a Senate committee found, and I quote, a pattern of underperformance and non-compliance in the uranium mining industry. It identified many gaps in knowledge and found an absence of reliable data on which to measure the extent of contamination from the uranium mining industry. If I can just talk about proliferation very quickly. Australia has no way of quarantining its uranium use for use only in nuclear power. We rely on the very under-resourced International Atomic Energy Agency, which itself admits it cannot guarantee where uranium ends up. The Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, Mohammed El-Baradei, described the agency's basic inspection rights as fairly limited, his words, complained about half-hearted efforts to improve the system and expressed concern that the safeguard system operates on a shoestring budget comparable to a local police department. It's the Executive Director, the Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The safeguards are just not there. Of the 10 nations we know that have developed nuclear weapons, 6 of them did it under political cover and or with the technical assistance of a nuclear power program. And the current threat, of course, is much larger than rogue states. We now have the threat of non-government actors, terrorist organisations, developing or gaining access potentially to nuclear weaponry. Now, I've always taken the view, as has Rita, inside the Labor Party and outside, that nuclear non-proliferation is a moral matter. And I said in the parliamentary debate to all those people from the moral wing of the Liberal Party, the religious right, who wear their morality on their sleeves, that they should look up Catholic social teaching about the threat of nuclear proliferation. The Catholic Church teaches that this is a moral matter. Pope John Paul II made an address in 1996 where he said, "The principle of the non-proliferation of nuclear arms, together with measures of nuclear disarmament and the prohibition of nuclear tests, are intimately interconnected objectives that must be met as soon as possible by means of effective controls at the international level." So those Liberal Party politicians who tell us they're in public life, public office for some sort of moral purpose, for moral reasons, should examine their conscience about the morality of nuclear proliferation. For me, the threat of nuclear proliferation is a moral matter. That's why for more than 20 years, inside and outside the Labor Party, I've been an opponent of the expansion of the uranium industry in this country. I am very pleased that a Labor government in this state brought about a legislative prohibition on uranium exploration and mining. I'm saddened that it is no longer a policy that enjoys support across the political spectrum, but I'm happy to share a platform with the Greens, with our Indigenous brothers and sisters, with peace movement, the environment movement, the labour movement, trade unionists, to pledge tonight to work with you all to build a movement in this state over the next few years as they're out there exploring for where the dollars are under the ground, to build a movement to roll them back at future elections and make clear that there's a very strong community view in this state against this very dangerous industry. Thank you.